Welcome to This Week in Metropolis. I'm James.
And I'm on holiday, so I don't even know what I'm doing here. Anyway, this week we are speaking to Sega Mania Magazine. It's Sam, Simon and Tim who have put together this magazine, which is a real throwback to, if you're as old as me, the 90s magazines that I used to absolutely love, and James, I'm sure, sort of observed as well. And just tell us all about that and their love of retro games, and we discuss about all things Sega, which is pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome, Matt. And yes, I do remember them. But before we get into the season finale, which it is, make sure you follow us on all of our socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're even on TikTok. We're even on TikTok, Matt. And you can check out the show on all the different podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple, Google, anyone you can think of, we're pretty much there. And you can watch it on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave us your comments, leave us your feedbacks. This is our last episode of season 7. We hope you've enjoyed it. We will be back soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to This Week in Metropolis.
Welcome to another episode of This Week in Metropolis. We are delighted to be joined on our Season 7 finale by Tim, Simon and Sam, the creators of the Sega Mania Magazine. Guys, welcome. Thank you for joining us. There's already a plug from Simon if you're watching this. Amazing. And Tim as well. Sam, you've got to pull something out of the bag here.
Hope you're wearing a T-shirt.
Or the pants. There you go. Brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant. Me and Matt do have copies. Unfortunately, they are the digital versions, so yes. We'll just have to post a picture of us reading.
I have got it open next to me for reference.
Just for fun facts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome. Yeah. Glad to be here.
Brilliant. For those, we just were talking prior to recording. Matt brought you guys and your magazine to my attention, and we absolutely love it, being massive retro gaming fans that we are. But for those that aren't aware, Tim, do you want to tell us about it?
It's I'm trying to explain it. Everything's been such a whirlwind, and I'm losing focus. Like, people keep asking me, and I'm sure my answer changes every time. The whole purpose of it really is it's just one big nostalgic trip. We all three of us absolutely love the Sega magazines of the 90s, and it's kind of sad that things like that aren't on the shelves anymore, and we just kind of wanted to bring back that sort of craziness that they used to have. They were always a little bit weird, a bit odd, sort of appealing to the teens of the 90s. And yeah, they talked about games, but they had a bit of a culture around them as well. And if you pick them up now and have a look at them, they reflect, the 90s. You can really see that, like with Oasis sunglasses and tie-dye t-shirts and hyper-global color transfers. You remember the ones you can put your hands on? They just sort of, you look at that and you think, wow, what a point in time. Things were really, come out of the 70s and the 80s, and things were really sort of starting to change as we rushed towards the 2000s. And then when we got past the 2000s, I feel like nothing really sort of stands out anymore. Everything if you look back at photos of yourself in sort of 2001, 2002, it doesn't really look all that much different from today. We kind of wanted to sort of bring that back a little bit, but also, and you could say, well, why didn't we do something on the PlayStation or, the Super Nintendo? It was mainly just because we felt like Sega had been forgotten about a little bit. They were at their prime in those days, and they were a big deal. And a lot of people credit the PlayStation with sort of making gaming grow up, with the nightclub scene and, Wipeout and the music that was around it. But I don't really think that's true. I think Sega was the real turning point for that. Nintendo was the kid's toy and Sega was where it's at. And so the magazine is really sort of just a celebration of that. And it gives sort of nostalgia junkies that hit that, that they're kind of missing from those days. But also it opens up that sort of, I'm trying to lose my words here, that sort of feeling for new people who didn't live through that time. You can sort of see, like, back then we didn't have the internet. Everything you learned about games was either from, a TV show like Games Master or a magazine you got your newsagent, and we just kind of want to capture a slice of that and sort of bring it back again, but for modern audiences. And so that's kind of what we try to do with the magazine, just sort of reviews of our favorite games, talking a little bit about the culture at the time, a little bit about the music, a little about the movies, and then put it into print, because that's how they were back then. They weren't on PDFs and they weren't on web pages, and it's something you can hold in your hand and do. I hope that's what we've achieved, but that's what the magazine's about, really.
I 100% think you have, because like James said, I saw you first on sort of Instagram, and it was a bit of a sort of, wow, that someone's doing a print magazine about gaming. That's, really cool for one. And looking through it and reading all the articles and whatever, it is really, I think it does really capture the mood of the magazines at the time. I remember sort of when growing up and getting things like computer and video games, but I think was an early one that I used to buy, like CMVG, and also Mean Machines I completely forgot about until you referenced it in the sort of magazine. And I frequently look on archive.org at sort of people have scanned loads of sort of old games magazines, and like the joy of looking at ones that I used to own and seeing the articles and thinking, oh wow, that was the the CD drive for the Super Nintendo. I remember that article. That was really exciting seeing that. So yeah, I think you really have succeeded in that. What, when you was looking at or thinking of doing it, what were the key parts of those magazines that you wanted to sort of reference, or not necessarily reference, or recapture, I guess?
I think it was, for me, it wasn't necessarily, we started off with the idea of trying to mimic the visual design, and you can still see some remnants of that on some of the pages. We've got that sort of cinema carpet style pattern on the back of some of the articles, and that was something that I really wanted to do all the way through the magazine. But it sounds a little arrogant, but it's really hard to make your magazine look crap. Yeah. So a lot of those magazines were put together on old sort of Amigas and old PCs, and I guess by doing it that way, that the magazines looked the way they looked back then by default. It just sort of happened. When you're using modern publishing tools, it's really hard it almost takes care of it for you. It's hard to get that really retro feel. And when I realized that I wasn't able to quite capture that visually, the focus turned more towards the writing, and that's what we've tried to take from those magazines and put into words. They're kind of a little bit cheeky, not necessarily always politically correct, although we are, we never aim to upset or offend anyone. We're never going to do that, but we always try to push the limits a little bit. And I think kind of that's kind of where we try to, that's what we've taken from them to try and get that sort of message across. I'm sure Simon, who've done more writing than me, can.
I was going to say the writing style of it sort of developed in such an organic way. It's a really weird mix of sort of, we're writing it as if it was sort of the early 90s, while at the same time being aware that it's not. And having those two styles, Joe, I think that just isn't going to work. And also, like Tim says, having the voice of like he's got a huge collection of old Sega magazines, and you read them and you do remember, it's like they had like a real character to them. And so trying to combine those three things into a writing style, it's like, oh, we're really going to have to either engineer this, or it's going to come across as disingenuous or contrived, and it's just not going to work. And then, we'd not met Simon before. Like Tim and I have been friends for a few years, and we'd not met Simon. So there's three of us, 10, all trying to write in that way. And the thing is, no, we weren't actually trying to write in that way. We just thought, let's just write. And we found that sort of our past experiences with probably just being shaped by those magazines, let's be honest, we grew up reading them, being products of that generation, being around at the time, and sort of a genuine sort of element to it, and sort of being like okay at writing, I suppose, and sort of writing, like Tim said, is something we're very passionate about. Having the opportunity to do it, it all just seemed to gel. And like Tim has just mentioned, without wanting to sort of toot our own horn a bit, I picked up we got a promotional copy and thought, this looks, we've really managed to do it, and but there wasn't a plan to, although it just kind of happened organically. So the writing style of it, we're so happy with it, because it's not something we've particularly worked on. It's just come through naturally, which is, I guess, what it must have been like for our listeners, I suppose.
With the writing as well, in the build up to it, I did dig out some old Mean Machines and read through it, and they do have that specific 90s attitude style, but when you look at it nowadays, it can be a bit cringy. And some of it's probably not appropriate the way we look at things nowadays. So we kind of took that but modernized it a little bit. So that's kind of how nostalgia works. You look back at things and they seem a bit better than they actually are. So this is nostalgia in your hands. Like on social media as well, the magazine we get compared to most is Mean Machines. So that was my favorite back in the day. So I'm really, really happy with that. The
irony is I base all my design and writing work off the back of Sega Power. I was never a Mean Machines reader. Done that by accident. Yeah.
So cool, Matt.
I was just going to say, I think from what you've all said though, I think maybe the ingredient in how you've got it looking authentic is that, like you said, you're sort of muddling your way through it. And I think from what I've read about the magazines of the past, I think a lot of those, because it was, quite a new thing, wasn't it? Video game journalism, I guess you could call it. At that time, you had PC magazines, which were very boring and sort of, talking about specs of stuff, but you didn't really have anything for games, and it sort of blossomed out of that time from the Master System and so on onwards, didn't it? And I think a lot of it was mainly young people getting together. A lot of industry in the 90s were the same, like media was the same. A lot of people just getting together and thinking, let's make a magazine, and they're sharing a flat and putting it together and so on. So maybe that's the secret source as such.
Do you think the Sega ones reflected the dynamic as well? Because we've recently, I don't know if you guys watched was it called High Score, Matt? Yeah, the Netflix series
documentary.
Yeah, which is really good. But interesting for me is my first console was a NES, and then I got a SNES, and then moved into PlayStation.
We are Nintendo boys, just as
just to kind of
we are too. We're all multi-format here.
But as it kind of explains, and even us growing up, was if your friend had a Sega, you wanted to be around there playing the Sega, even though you had a SNES or whatever. Like Sega was like the cool kid, and I think that was reflected in that series. Do you think, they pushed the boundaries in certain areas, and do you think the magazines from then, and in reflection to what you guys are saying, because one of the things that we noticed that your magazine's got that retro feel to it, but it's also kind of a little bit kind of, like you say, a bit adult in places. There's a few curse words, whatever, which is kind of the Sega kind of way, if you know what I mean.
I think thinking back sort of at that time, I think there was a bit of a feedback loop going on. So Sega, under Tom Kalinske in America, they weren't fighting a losing battle. They were just new into the market, and what they did was they just went on the attack. There was actually a famous court case off the back of some of their adverts where they were openly insulting Nintendo. Nintendo sued, and the court came back and said, as long as it's not defamation, there's nothing you can do about this. It's it's all clean, good fun, and they're taking pot shots, and you have the opportunity to respond, which Nintendo never did because they're a little bit too clean cut. But I think when they started those advertising campaigns, that was what kicked off that whole, Sega is for adults sort of thing. And then I think what happened is that almost gave the press and the magazines a license to be a little bit cheeky and a little bit, poking fun. And then, fans really responded to those magazines. And then I think Sega saw what was going on there, so they took it a little bit further with Pirate TV. And so I think there was that feedback loop going sort of back and forward that sort of occurred during that time. We've identified that it's definitely unique to Sega in that era. If you look at Nintendo Power from that sort of era, it's like reading the Bible.
It's a good comparison. What I want to know is, and we've had people who've come on and made their own books. We've had people come on and made their own comic books as well. How do you go about making a magazine? Because am I right in thinking that you guys did consider doing a book as well, or that was and other options? You looked at other avenues, but then you decided on the magazine.
Sorry, I think that's going to be me to start on answering that again. So, in the front of the magazine, I do detail a little bit about sort of the journey of kind of how we got here. But I think sort of my origin story is very similar to sort of Sam and Simon's. But I've always wanted to create stuff and do like outside of work hours, same as you were. You know, my job's probably boring. I'm a data engineer and I hate it. Well, I don't hate it, but it just, you know, it's not fun. And for years and years, I've always wanted to be creating stuff to do with my hobbies. So I've made apps and blogs and YouTube shows, and I've tried writing books, but they've either not worked or I just haven't had the time to commit to them. So writing a book, for example, I'm the kind of person where I can't do it in little sections. I have to get on a writing streak and I have to sit there for hours and do it to be satisfied with the job that I'm doing. Unfortunately, just due to the fact that I've got a family and, you know, a full-time job and a house that constantly seems to be falling down, I just can't do that. And so the idea of a magazine for me came about because it, you know, it's more manageable, it's more bite-sized, and it seemed more achievable. I'm kind of finding that that's not necessarily the case because it's an enormous amount of work, but that's how I sort of got to this point personally. But, you know, Sam, I know that you've been writing, you still are writing a book, and Simon, I believe you've finished some, haven't you? And you've still got more going on, is that correct?
I do write a lot in my spare time. Yeah, I write a lot of fiction, and you know, my interest in the way stories are told and the way worlds are created stemmed from games. Mm-hmm. So this gave me the opportunity to kind of link the two. I love writing. I love games. So, like was mentioned earlier, I think I didn't actually know these two until this started. But my friend who kind of proofreads all my stuff, she put me in touch with Tim because she knew that I'd be all over this project, and that's how I got involved. And it's interesting. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just wrote and stuff came out.
Do you know what? It's amazing because you're not the first person that we've had on as well who they've never even met each other. It's only ever been kind of over Zoom or in text or whatever, and yet they're working. We had a group of guys who came on who started up their own brewery during lockdown, and a few of them were friends, but then a few others, it might have been one of their friends came on board and so forth, but they'd never actually all been in a room together over the kind of, and we spoke to them at the beginning of this year, I think. So it's mad how these scenarios do come about. It's
what's really cool, like my background is I'm actually currently still a journalist. So I've been since 2007 was when I started. So I've been around a long time. We're talking like local newspapers and stuff like that. And I met Tim when we both worked for sort of a regional magazine in Dorset. And it's kind of moving now towards, as you guys probably know, a lot of it is digital media. So I don't like. The paper I work for still exists, but I no longer work for it directly. So it's all online now. It's like, you know, online news and things like that. And the idea of having a physical product was just so cool because I still remember, 2007, I was 19 years old when I started, and first time I got my name on the front page of a newspaper, holding that up and being like, oh my God, like I did this. And although you still, I now sort of manage reporters and I help develop them, and so I'm much more of sort of a sub-editor, line manager kind of thing now, which is, I still like to write, and this is the thing, and I don't really get to do that anymore. And so when we put this together, when Tim said he wanted to do this magazine, we all just had a blast with it. And as soon as he sent across the copies through the post, it was like, oh my, like, I think I've put a tweet out about it. It's like, I can't believe I'm holding this in my hands, like a physical print product, because sort of without sort of going off on the journalism industry too much, it's kind of like print is not, not the way forward at the moment. It's all digital with, all sorts of things going on. And so I was just like, oh my God, like our name, our pictures are in this. And it sounds so silly because like, of course they are, we made it. Like we can put something wherever we want.
You can put your face on the front page.
I could have.
I kind of got Sam involved because for years and years we've had many sort of chats, you know, when we're feeling down about our jobs or, you know, having a very rough time of things, we always end up having a few pints, and probably me more than Sam, but we always have a few pints over the years and be like, oh, we should do something, we should do this, we should make our own game, or we should do a film or something. And we've been doing that for years and years, and you know, nothing ever comes of it. It's just pub talk, you know. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this, and wouldn't it be cool if we did that? You know, realistically, it's never going to happen. But then, as soon as the idea of a magazine just popped into my head, I kind of sat and I thought, you know, actually, this is something we could do. And you know, and I asked quite a few friends, and Sam was the only one stupid enough to say yes, and here we are. So,
but it's the same with anyone we've had on who's created something physical like that. Like I said, the comic book, or the book that we had on, which was Andy Robertson. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He does like he's Geek Dad Gamer, who does like, and it's all about
Taming
family gaming. Yeah, Taming Gaming is the website and book that he's done. But even the comic book, everyone said when they got that copy in their hand, it's just a feeling of pride that that's what you've created, and I completely get that. And even for us, like as when the guy who came on who wrote his own comic, he's someone I grew up living next door to. He's a year older than me, and he said he'd had this kind of story in his head for 10 years. It was just about putting it on paper and finding someone to do the artwork, because he said otherwise it'd just be stickmen on a bit of paper. But he said, you know, even for me, holding that and feeling proud of my mate who's done that, do you know what I mean? It's an amazing feeling, I imagine.
It's amazing how contagious it is, because when we started out, I think it was fair to say that we had sort of like modest expectations for it. And from, you know, almost the first time we put anything on social media, especially on Twitter, I just started trying to follow people who were in the scene to be like, I want to sort of get back involved in this, because, you know, my Twitter account's pretty dormant. And after a while, you realize like how many people are out there, and if they have that same sense of like, oh, this is really cool, I've got this. And then you have that, like, you know, that loop of like, oh my God, yeah, we create that. And oh my God, people like it. Like, it was quite surprising, at least to me. I don't like it.
Well, we did, that was the one thing about this, is I did no market research to see whether or not anyone actually wanted to see this thing. And it didn't really matter all that much to me. I was like, I just want to, you know, we keep saying these words, but we just want to do something. So let's just do it and stick it out there, and I'll cover the cost for the first one, even though my wife will probably kill me. And what happens? And it's just been absolutely insane. What, you know, the reception's fantastic, and it's quite validating to see that you know, other people miss what we miss in terms of, you know, going back to that long rant I made about old Sega magazines. Other people feel that void in their lives and want that back. And I think also, yeah, like you mentioned, the physical thing is also a great draw as well. That's maybe the only thing I did have some sort of inkling about, is that especially during the pandemic, people have got back into collecting things quite a lot. But even before then, we've seen sort of an increase in the number of vinyl records sold. You know, I'm a collector of that, and cassette tapes are coming back, and the price of retro games has gone through the roof, because people are chasing their childhood, or they've hit that age where their disposable income is slightly higher, and they can start, you know, grabbing all the things they couldn't get as a child. And so that was the only thing I was really certain about, that there was a need for something physical. People have kind of got digital burnout a little bit. In some regards, obviously, you know, things like podcasts and YouTube videos are so hugely popular and people love that. But in terms of news articles and consuming reviews and information about games, there's so many websites out there covering the same things over and over again, and some of them are absolutely fantastic, and, you know, credit to the people who put together some of those resources, they're brilliant. But I just definitely knew there was just a desire out there in some form for some kind of physical paper copy, especially when you see things like official PlayStation magazine, that's now gone. You know, and there's a handful of others I can't think off the top of my head that are all wound down and shut down, and that was the only gap that I saw. But in terms of Sega and the old games, wasn't 100% sure anyone would still care about them. But yeah, as Sam said, they quite rightly do. Its community is huge. It's great.
Which I was watching your video on your website, which you was talking about shipping and things like that. But one thing I picked up on was sort of the international sort of response. You know, you was listing all the different countries and that. had placed orders. Was that a surprise? Because I always imagine, obviously, we're from the UK, and it always seems sort of the games magazine, certainly that we read of that time, had a very sort of British sort of sense of humour and so on to them, which yours then carries on. Was you surprised at the international response as well?
It's become more surprising over the last few days because it's now expanded. We now have people in Japan buy the magazine, in Brazil buy the magazine, Australia, New Zealand. It really surprises me, and it worries me slightly because, as you said, it's very British what we've done, and I do kind of hope that these people overseas haven't got just caught up in the hype of seeing it being shared around, and I hope they're not disappointed when they get it, if they look at it and think, I don't understand what half these things mean. That does worry me a little bit. It's really surprising. It's also really nice as well, just to get that love from other places in the world. Sort of brings us all a little bit closer. Just, it's really nice.
As someone who wrote the kind of news articles, some of the news snippets, and did an article on what the other companies were doing, I kind of had to be quite British because this magazine's about 1990, and everything comes out in different years in different territories. So I had to concentrate on what came out in Britain in 1990. So hopefully they'll understand.
And even if they don't, they get an opportunity to look again at what the gaming landscape was like in this country, because in the early 90s, Europe was always last in terms of getting things released. The reason for that was usually due to translations and manuals. It took them longer to cover all of the European languages. That's usually why we're last in the chain. Hopefully some people are starting to see how far behind we were when it came to a lot of those things.
I always remember reading it was, I know, like a glance into a different world when you saw some of the games coming out in Japan, or like when the Mega Drive came out, and seeing those sort of things unfolding, and well, this could be a year for before I can get my hands on any of this. So it's just tantalizing.
Not Sega, but the research in this magazine, I fully realised how long it took the SNES to come out in Europe, which is crazy to me.
What was the gap in years?
Like 3 years, was it?
Really?
Yeah, I think it was 90 in Japan, 93 in UK.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Didn't you order one, Matt, from Japan, or was that a different console?
No, I had a friend at the time that he got a Japanese Mega Drive, I think, and that was exotic. So seeing that think, wow. And I quite like the appearance in the Japanese sort of box and so on. It just looked really cool. As well, the SNES looked really cool as well in the Japanese version, and that sort of grey with the outline and so on. Loved it.
One thing that I love about the magazine as well is, although you're appealing to that nostalgia that everyone has, or that gaming fans have from that, you also include some of the current stuff going on and modern day stuff. I mean, there's a bit in the first issue about Streets of Rage 4, and I thought that was a really nice touch, because you're not putting all your chips in one area as such. You're still keeping a little bit in there to modernise it as well, and I love that.
Not ignoring the fact it is 2021.
Yeah, exactly.
As such.
Laughing to myself because basically, after the promo copy went out, but one thing that I really struggle with is I've never designed a magazine from scratch before. When you're working on it on a monitor, you can put the font size to like 0.12, and you're like, that looks all right. And then you get it printed, and you're like, oh my god, my name is on the wall of China. Like, it is huge. And so we had this big panic where I was like, I've got to drop that down because it looks ridiculous. And I did all of that, and of course everything squashed. And I was like, shit, we've got loads of empty space. Quick, Simon, grab something about Streets of Rage.
Put something there.
So that's kind of why that ended up there. So that wasn't really an intention to do more modern stuff. But I think since then, and because that's been received quite well, a lot of people have mentioned that in various reviews and articles that have gone out about the magazine. So yeah, we will be doing more current day stuff in future issues, but it won't. it will be limited to things that we think are really notable and worth talking about. Definitely.
Would you say, because you obviously was working on that first issue, or you correct me if I'm wrong here, you might tell me otherwise, but once you'd got that first issue done and you're like, that's it, that's ready to print or whatever, we're happy with that, and then you get it out there, and then it's kind of must be a bit of a mad rush because you think, now we need to work on the second one, or had you already kind of planned well far ahead and have already been writing well ahead of issues, if you know what I mean? What
we've had in the immediate aftermath of issue 1 is like, it's almost like we wish we could be focusing more on issue 2 because like Tim unfortunately has borne the brunt of this, but getting the magazine to people, and like you mentioned earlier, you sort of checked out the Twitter and Facebook, and there's been quite a few messages about, here's why your magazine might not have arrived yet, here's what, the situation there, please everybody remember that it's literally just us three trying to get to Europe and America and all this kind of thing. And we found that the biggest challenge so far, and we were just talking about this a bit before we started chatting to you guys, was dealing with the logistical side of it afterwards. So almost like, although it didn't seem it at the time, writing it and putting it together has turned out to be the easy part, because all sorts of, like Tim, bless him, is sort of running to the post office with, every time anyone gets a new order, we're sort of getting to the point where it's like, oh, we've got a new order. Like, that's really good, but also, like, it's quite difficult.
We've got to do something now.
Yeah.
They want it, yeah.
So, like, I think we always have plans, like, the idea of the magazine going forward is, obviously, you see in the front, is this one is 1990. It's going to go year by year until a certain point. But so we've had ideas about that. We've obviously, basically, the games that came out in that year, we've covered stuff like movies and major events. I'm really keen on this one to do. Basically 1991 is when Ren and Stimpy came out and Doug came out, and a lot of famous old Nickelodeon shows that people, like I say, who were after that nostalgia kick will remember.
Yeah,
I've quite ambitiously messaged Billy West on Twitter, who did the voice of Doug and Ren and Stimpy, to see if he wants to do something, but I'm not sure how successful that will be. If not, if he doesn't bite, I'll just go, remember this, and sort of dig up some facts and things like that, and just give people, that thing. But having the structure of the magazine as it is does kind of give you a lot of places to go from the beginning, so it's not really like you have to plan things too much, because like, well, we know this came out in 1991, the next issue is a heavy Game Gear thing, because that's when that came out. And what we found out, I've certainly got a lot more ideas now that we've got the first one out. In many ways it's made a few things easier, because like I say, you follow more people on Twitter, they get in contact with you, and they're like, oh, I've got this huge collection, and you're like, oh my god, that would just be really cool to do a feature on, can we talk to you? And it has just opened all these doors. And so if anything, we've got more ideas for issue 2 than we thought we might have in the beginning. But we're sort of in this middle point at the moment where we're kind of we have started it, and we're moving along with it fairly nicely. But there's like, oh god, there's still people who want issue 1. What do we do? And it's
the admin and logistics has really caught me off guard. It's been really, really tough, to the point where I've had to say to Sam and Simon, like, look, you two just. We used the app Trello to organize the magazine, and I just said, look, all of the base articles and games are on there. Please just start grabbing stuff, just start writing stuff. But I'm out. I'm like Deborah Mead, and I'm out for like for a week or two, because I literally cannot keep up with this. And I don't know why I just didn't think of that at the time, or maybe I was a little bit naive and just thought, posting like hundreds of magazines, big deal, but it's been really, really difficult. But as I've been doing it, I've been learning a lot more about how it all works, so it'll be smoother with the next issue. But and I do sort of have my, in terms, because I'm responsible for all the page design, I do kind of think I have it sort of planned in my head in rough terms. So in a sense, issue 2 is being done, and was being done even before issue 1 was finished, but purely in my head, and we haven't been able to start it as soon as I would have liked to, because of the admin issues. But that'll improve in time, I'm sure. Simon's a machine as well. Simon just keeps writing, we can't stop him. Simon's written issue 3 and 4 already.
That's not.
He's currently writing now as well.
Don't stop.
As a massive nerd, I guess, I've kind of, like, for my own interest, I've already written reviews for things like Skies of Arcadia, which would be issue loads away. I don't even know. So,
issue 12 or 11 or 10, something like that. Yeah. See, told you.
Bring it to the games themselves. You mentioned earlier about, we were talking about the joy of having a physical object. When it comes to the retro games, are you a stickler for owning the cartridge? I can see you got a Mega Drive bit behind you, Tim. Are you a stickler for having a cartridge and that physical object, or are you content with an emulator on your PC or so on? How do you sit with those things?
I will always prefer physical, where I can. I don't have a big collection anymore. I used to. I've moved houses and traveled a lot, and unfortunately, they've all gone or been sold, and I regret that massively. But I've got a flash cart in that just has all the games on it.
Yeah.
It's not technically legal, but bring it on, Sega. They're dead now anyway. They're not. But they're not. But might as well.
That's a good idea for an article, and you can headline "Bring it on, Sega," and we can talk about that.
I always prefer physical. Because I'm a real nerd in that I really get funny about things like latency and tech specs, and I've got an old CRT there because it's just not the same as LCD. So personally, in my day-to-day, if I'm playing the games, it will always be physical, but when it comes to the magazine, just for the easiness of screenshots, it has to be emulation.
Yeah, although it is very difficult. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I would so prefer to have my Mega Drive than I'm trying to do a review for Castle of Illusion with Mickey Mouse and trying to do it with the arrows and the ASD. It's a nightmare. I'm sure I was better at this game when I was 5 years old. Now I just can't get the hang of it.
You just need to get yourself a nice joypads to plug in, one of those 8-bit do ones or whatever. Now.
In these boxes here, I've got like 2 USB Sega Saturn pads. I'm sorry about that. Not taking care of my employees.
I think what's amazing, I mean, I know you mentioned before, Tim, about having kids, but I've got a 4-year-old who is nearly 5 now, and when I wanted to get him into gaming, I've got a PlayStation 5 now, but I wanted him to get used to and almost see them old games that I played, and I've got a classic NES, one of the mini ones, and me and him were playing on that for hours, and he absolutely loved it. I mean, now he's not bothered about it anymore because he's on the PlayStation now, but it's that kind of retro appreciation, I think, is such a big thing now. And I think certainly speaking on behalf of myself, probably forgot about a lot of them classic games and what I grew up playing. Me and Matt were only talking from looking at your magazine, Paperboy. I mean, what a boring game, but I loved it when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? There's all them sort of games where
and I hated it.
You hated it. But
we're
big disagreement. We had a fallout and everything, but that you forget how far gaming has come over the years to what it is now, and I think people lose sight of what we appreciated and just picking them games up. I mean, like you just said, Sam, playing some of them games on the classic NES now, I'm thinking this will be easy. I'm playing games well advanced from this. But it's just that it's not as
sensitive. You.
Yeah. Oh, it's ridiculous.
There's like a purity to them as well. Like I hadn't. We've all sort of got a little column in the front of the magazine about basically sort of introducing ourselves and our first memories of gaming and what we remember, what we're playing now. And as you say, we're not sat there playing the Master System and nothing else. Like I play World of Warcraft, I play Dota, I play all these quite complicated games, and it involves a lot of communication with people online, and sometimes you encounter some less than pleasant people online. So we've spent much of our adult lives playing those games, and they're all very dark, and I'm playing The Last of Us as well, and it's like, oh, this is grim, innit? This is bleak. And then you go back and you play, I can't remember the first one I reviewed, it might have been Harrier, and you just think, this is such a simple game, but I'll be damned if it's not keeping me as entertained as another game would be. And it's not just because, I grew up in that era and remember it. It's
a great game.
It's just a draw to the game. It's just simple. You plug it in and play. There's no DLC. There's no... You have to find a team. You don't have to learn elaborate instructions. There's 3
You don't have to do an achievement.
Yeah, exactly. Figure it out. Off you go. And I was just like... a dark part of me thought when I started this, I'm going to play these games on the emulator and it's going to be crap because look at what we've got now.
Yeah.
And I went back to it. I'm like, I've got to write the review soon, but I actually just want to keep going with
Yeah.
it. And I'm like slightly younger, so there's a lot of classic titles I hadn't got, and Ghouls and Ghosts was one of them.
That's an incredible game.
Yeah, but I'd never played it, so I was going back thinking, oh, this is from 1990. This is, I'll take it for what it is. And I was like, why am I dying so much? This shouldn't be so hard. But there's there's a purity to it that you just think, oh, yeah.
There's the
100%.
minimalism of those games as well. It kind of, I think there's something to be said for the fact that it almost lends itself for you to fill in the blanks a bit, and it becomes that way. The difference between reading a book and watching a film, where you kind of fill in a lot more, and it can be a much more personal experience. Yeah. So, the way someone interprets Sonic running from left to right can be completely different to someone else. Whereas now, like in games nowadays, because of the technology, like, everything's there, and that has its own merit, but there's merits to be had in both ways. So,
100%.
And I think just leading off what Simon said, a little bit what you said, James, as well, is that the thing, talking about children, my daughter's 2, and believe it or not, I bought that Mega Drive for her. Now, she's not old enough for it yet. My wife, it's just an excuse for me to spend money on old systems again. But for me, maybe less so with the Mega Drive, but my childhood, my first games console was a Spectrum ZX2 Plus, and I was 4, and I put cassettes in, and you had to type load, and then you had to wait as it screamed at you for 15 minutes, and then you got to play one round of Street Fighter 2, and then you had to flip the tape and load it again. And then I went on to the Amiga, and then you had to learn how Workbench worked and booting the discs. And I feel like I've gained a lot from that, and I kind of worry that I that was my light bulb moment. Cheers, Sam. I was going to go off tangent. You pulled that, and everything's become clear again. Gaming kind of for me had to be earned. I had to learn how to do that. And today with touch screens and also like the controls, it's not the case of everything's just gestures on a screen in UI, and you tap until you hit the right thing. The feedback's important. The feeling of it is important. How to use the controller is important, and you develop the reflexes, and and I guess in some ways some muscle groups in your hands become slightly better. And so for me, it's important to me that my daughter goes. I'm not going to force her to it, and she might not be interested, but I'd certainly like to try and introduce her into technology. In the same way that I did, and hopefully she'll gain something from that. She'll earn the ability to play games rather than just being blasted straight at her. And then being a little bit abstract now, hopefully if some younger people pick up our magazine, it'll inspire them to go back in time and play some of these games and go through some of the challenges we did to just get the damn things to work sometimes. I mean, I ordered some Game Gear cartridges the other day, and I had to blow the crap out of them to get them to play. You're not meant to do that, actually, but so what you're mentioning about sort of children and gaming. Yeah.
It's what's mad as well. I mean, when you see the controllers compared to when we were youngsters, you might have only had a D-pad and 2 buttons, or 3 buttons on the Sega and so forth. So now to have kind of 4 buttons, a D-pad, 2 analog sticks, and the trigger buttons at the back, there's so much for a young. I mean, the thing is, youngsters are growing up a lot quicker, I think, with technology and things like that now, and we have to understand that. When they're in school, Matt's got 2 older boys, so they're kind of used to picking up technology quicker than probably what we did. But at the same time, they're still small little hands. When I see my son holding a PlayStation controller, he can't reach around to do all the things. He's having to kind of hold it in a really awkward way at times.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It goes the other way as well. It offers a more simplistic experience for who may struggle with the complexity of some games. I mean, it could be some stuff I'd imagine could be quite overwhelming for some children.
Exactly. Even just stuff like having to sign into a user. There's none of that.
No,
where it just used to be press start.
Oh, yeah. That is an absolute joy. I'm glad you said your first one was a Spectrum Plus 2. I had a Plus 2A, and I swear the only difference that A made was it never loaded games. I remember just painful, like buying a game and thinking, this is brilliant, I can't wait to play that, and half an hour later and nothing. Awful thing.
Well, we did put a post out earlier on Instagram and asked if any of our followers, and I know you kindly shared it as well, had any questions. And we had one that caught my eye from a friend of the show, friend of mine, Steve, part of SCW, the wrestling channel. It's not wrestling related, Tim, because I know you're not a fan.
Don't get me started on wrestling. We'll make a magazine after this.
We've got much time left, so yeah.
My first note that I made was Tim doesn't like wrestling, so you'll be pleased that I noticed that. But Steve wants to know: are there any Sega games or series, kind of retro ones, that you would want to see remastered that haven't been?
Like Streets of Rage was, I guess. Isn't it?
Which I've got. It's amazing.
My biggest one has already been done, and it's Streets of Rage.
So it's awesome, isn't it?
I love Streets of Rage 4. It's so good. It captures the atmosphere so well, and they did the music proud. I'm really impressed with it. They did. I think it has happened, but not very well. Rocket Knight, the Sparkster.
Rocket Knight Adventures, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Konami, I think, and it's a little kind of mouse thing in armor. That was a really good game, and that is ripe for a good remake, I think. There's going to be loads that I remember at 4 in the morning. But
I was like, what was it, the cartridge that was in the most? And I was just trying to think, what and has that been done? And you mentioned Streets of Rage. There was also Alex Kidd has recently been redone, and I was thinking, and the one I put my name by for one of the reviews in 1991 was Toe Jam and Earl.
Yeah,
but
there has been a recent one of those, hasn't there?
That's good because I can play it.
Only reason I know that I'm awful at hoarding games, and I've got like a Steam library that's full of stuff, and that is one of them. But I've never played it. So yeah, I need to.
I knew I was in danger of saying one. You guys were going to go, oh yeah, they've done that.
I've got three, so I can cover you. I would love to see something done with Ristar or Rystar. If you're familiar with that, the little yellow dude, stretchy out hands. That was a late Mega Drive release, and that was done by the Sonic team who did the Sonic series. It's just sort of a different. But I hope that's right. Someone's going to come on and go, it wasn't made by Sonic team, it was made by someone else. I'm never finding anything, and you don't do anything. I'd love to see that remake because that was a really interesting gameplay mechanic, and it's not really talked about a great deal. And it's also got an amazing soundtrack. So yeah, I'd love to see that. The other one is Dynamite Heady. It's a treasure game. I remember another yellow guy. I love the color yellow, where you can replaces his head and you can stick the walls. That also would be a brilliant one to see come back. And then the very last one, and I don't know if this is a Sega game, but I've only ever played it on the Sega Saturn. That's one called Elevator Action Returns. That's a great game, and not many people know about it. But it just to quickly talk about what you do is you just start off at the top of a skyscraper, come down elevators, you walk left and right, shoot bad guys, you collect pickups. The idea is you've got to get to the bottom floor before the tower explodes. Hugely fun game. It was in the arcades on the Sega Saturn, and I've never
Sounds familiar. Now you're describing it. Yeah.
I've never seen anything about it since. It's got beautiful sprite work, and it's just really addictive. It's one of these arcade games that isn't cheap. It doesn't try to take all your pound coins off you.
Yeah,
quite fair. And I love that game. I'd love to see that done again.
Interesting, Matt. Have you got one that you'd want?
One that I think you reminded me of actually seeing in 1991. You mentioned the game on there, but I played it on an Amiga more than anything. Was Road Rash. I absolutely loved Road Rash, and I think that would make an awesome game. Now, just again, it's very simple, but I think it looked good at the time, and I think just with a little extra polish for like the newer consoles, I think it'd be a fantastic game.
Yeah, I don't know why
find a spiritual successor, and I forget the name. Road Redemption, maybe. And it didn't quite live up to it, but I'll steal yours as well. That's the one I want. A really good Road Rash game.
Nice. Well, Tim, you mentioned, or you referenced Sonic a second ago, so that leads on to another one of these.
Question mark. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on again. My question to you and to your guests, especially with Sega, is about the Sonic film. and what your thoughts were on that, and also your thoughts on the sequel. And I know there's some information out there about all the new characters having in the sequel film. So what we think about that. Cheers, thanks.
We'll start with you, Simon.
I do have thoughts on that film. Yeah, I did see it. I went to see it with my wife and daughter because they're both into games. I enjoyed it, but part of me is I don't know why modern films have to kind of make everything set in the real world. So they made up this convoluted reason for Sonic to come to Earth and befriend the sheriff guy. And I was just watching it and I was like, this is fine. But there's a big part of me that's like, why can't it just be Sonic in the Green Hill Zone, fighting robots, beating Robotnik? Why all this pseudo science nonsense?
Which all the animated TV programs were, because even recently, I mean, I remember my boys watching one probably a few years ago, and that was exactly what it was. Is the characters, and he, Dr. Robotnik turns up, and they have to defeat him for whatever reason. So
Sonic has been my favorite thing the day I was born. That's not true because it came out after I was born. You know what I'm saying? I loved the franchise up until early 2000s, and now it's dead to me. But I kind of lots of things are dead to me today. I'm sorry, I remember going down a black hole. I'm fine, honestly. I went to see the Sonic film because I kind of had to, and I kind of had the same thoughts as Simon, as in it was a bit safe. I could tell the studio was kind of unsure, and they thought we've got to hit every target demographic here just to make sure we get our money back. But I kind of and so they did the whole human character. Jim Carrey I thought was excellent in it. He really carried that film, but I came out of it quite pleased. I thought it could have been a lot worse. They really could have messed it up, but I found it entertaining. I found it a little bit too PG. It tried to be a little bit sort of cheeky and naughty, but it ended up just being a bit cringe. But I kind of enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to the sequel because in the very beginning of the film, you did actually see Knuckles' race as the enemy. And the way they did that had links back to the Sonic Adventure game in terms of their styling. So I kind of feel like they, and the fact that they put Tails, a spoiler for anyone who's not seen it, Tails appears at the end. Sorry, ruined it. It suggested that they do have plans to possibly go deeper into the Sonic meta a bit, and we may get something better out of the sequel now that now that it's been financially successful. I think sequel might actually give me and Simon a little bit more of what we want, but that remains to be seen. I hope that's the way it works out anyway, but I thought it was okay.
Sam?
I, to my shame, have not seen it, so I need to...
Well, Tim's just ruined it for you anyway.
Yeah, so, no, that's fine.
You and me both, Sam. I've not seen it.
Oh, sorry.
No. Matt, what usually happens with me and Matt is Matt will see the film before me 9 times out of 10, and then he'll say, "Oh, I won't spoil it for you," and I'll say, "Oh, don't worry about it," and then he tells me what happened. So I was aware. We also, because we post kind of movie-related news, we posted recently about some of the kind of filming for the Sonic movie, which, as you referred to.
I'd quite like to see it. Like, obviously, it's on my list of things to watch, and the fact that Tim liked it is probably my benchmark for its quality in terms of the product it makes up. But one thing I remember a lot of hype about it, and I remember it was interesting that I think the studio listened to people because the original design for the Sonic character
it was horrific.
Yeah, spooky,
absolutely horrific.
Really, really weird.
I still think that was intentional.
Do you think so?
I think that was viral marketing.
Wow,
interesting.
Wow, man.
I'd say it's very good viral marketing if that was,
yeah. So like Simon said, I remember watching the cartoon, and I remember reading the comics, and like you said, it's set in that world. But I think that's just what all the studios are doing at the moment, isn't it? Because it's like I saw Detective Pikachu as well, and that was very it was in the Pokemon world, but it was kind of like a reimagined version of where we are. And that's the impression I got from Sonic as well.
I get a similar vibe of the Transformers movies, the recent ones. Like, why can't it just be in space and huge battles and stuff? I don't know.
And why can't they not have the pointless actors and just like follow them around?
Like Mark Wahlberg.
Why do you need Mark Wahlberg in it? Exactly.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's when anything that is going to require adult supervision, they have to put something in for the parents. I wonder whether it's something to do with that. That's the only safe bet the safe thing they can do is there's got to be something there for mum and dad to.
But this is the thing, you are mum and dad.
Yeah, as a parent.
That's a good point.
Yeah. We don't want them. Yeah.
So who are they doing that for?
Well,
Who are your target audience?
Yeah, that is a very good point. Yeah, never thought of it that way. I think I'm still young inside my head. I'm not. I'm old.
We've got a couple more questions before we wrap this one up. With regards to modern gaming, is there anything that you don't necessarily miss from the old games?
Just be pretty obvious and just say I've gotten very used to quick saves and the more forgiving nature of modern gaming. Just due to the amount of time I've got to play games nowadays, I don't have the time to put in the amount of effort I used to. But other than that, there's a place for everything, I think, as evidenced by the resurgence of retro style gaming.
Youngsters are privileged now, aren't they, with the speed of loading times and things like that. I mean, I do wonder if in 10 years, 20 years, are the youngsters of today going to be moaning about how slow like the current day consoles are? I can't see it getting much quicker anymore.
Do you know what it's going to be though? There is Mark Zuckerberg came out sort of with this a week or so ago, that he's planning on creating the metaverse. And the metaverse, if you don't know, is basically the real world and the virtual world seamlessly combined. And that's his mission with Facebook, is to create that. And so it will be Ready Player One, but for real. But basically, with augmented reality and things like that, there won't be load times because it will just constant, That's slightly frightening, but yeah.
It is terrifying. Yeah. I think for me, I only sort of know this retroactively is as I mentioned about specs and latency and things like that. Is now that I've gone back to the old consoles, I now know as an adult, having learned about them, that the little composite RF cable that they came with gives you a terrible picture, and now I'm kind of having to chase down RGB SCART cables and then cutting pins on certain chips inside the console and soldering things to get the absolute best out of them, because I know that it's there and I can't settle for anything less. I'm driving my wife mad with stuff like that. I'm like, we need a new 4K TV because they brought out this new standard, we have to have it. I'm that sort of person. But you don't get any of that with modern consoles. It's HDMI lead, it's in, and you get the best of what it can be. Whereas with old consoles now, I have a real hard time with it, and it costs me a goddamn fortune to try and get them looking the best that they can be. And that's my one, is in it, the plug and play nature of it, I guess, is what really I really love about modern consoles, and I don't miss pissing around with cables on old consoles.
But I guess the great thing, certainly something I'm very fond of at the moment, is you can bring the old consoles back to, with the technology we have, and I think with the internet, particularly the resources you have, you can do things like you've said. You can modify a console. I've recently sort of modified an Xbox, the original Xbox, and sort of put a big hard drive in it, and it has all the emulators and everything you can possibly want in it. I've recently done a Game Boy, but you probably can't see that because there's no background. And it's got an IPS screen in it now, and a lithium polymer battery and stuff like that. It's amazing. It just completely. You still get an authentic experience, but it just
reinvigorates it.
Yeah.
It's a big word for me this time.
Well done.
Sam, what about you?
I mean, I'm going to copy Simon's answer really, and that's just purely because reviewing some of these, depending on sort of, I think it might be the emulator you use or whatever, but when I was reviewing Ghouls and Ghosts, I was like, oh, this kind of remembers where I am, and it's a lot more forgiving than something like, I keep mentioning this, it's the last game I played, Castle of Illusion with Mickey Mouse. It's like, oh, I've got to the toy level, but I've lost all my lives, and I now have to start from the beginning, and this is going to be a really difficult review if I want to sort of talk about anything past the first 2 levels. But at the same time, there's kind of, I mentioned it in a previous answer, that purity of it's like, no, you failed, you try again. You don't revert to, oh, here comes a boss, I'll just save it here, and then, oh, I forgot to equip the right sword for it. If you're playing Skyrim or something, I'll equip that now. Now I can save. And you save 3 times before you do every encounter just in case. You think, that is quite forgiving, but is it too much? Every game has a tutorial. You can, here's what everything does. Whereas like something like Ghouls and Ghosts or whatever, it's like, you're a knight, go and deal with this, figure it out. And if you die, you die. And like a lot of it's like level learning as well. Like, the pattern that this mob is going to come at this point, and there's almost like a science to it. But yeah, on occasions I would think, God, I wish I could at the end of a stage just be able to start that stage again rather than all the way back to the beginning.
That's what our cheats page is for.
Well, there you go. I don't know about you guys, but I find when I play some of them retro games and you keep dying, you become impatient because you should be able to do it. Like we all said, we're kind of all grown men now, we're adults, so we should be able to get past these basic games or whatever. And you start kind of rushing through, and that's when the mistakes really start to appear. Especially when I'm doing it in front of my 4-year-old, and he's
you're trying to impress him.
And I'm really trying to. Don't worry, son, I've got this. But yeah.
I think the fact that we're a lot more time poor as adults makes it even worse. Because when you were a kid, I mean, I only had like 4 Mega Drive games because my mum and dad couldn't afford to buy me any. Some birthdays. I had all the time in the world in the summer holidays to sit and play that one game over and over and over and over again. You go back to a retro game now as an adult, you've got maybe a half-hour window to sit down and play it, and I get some real rage with some of them now that I didn't get as a kid.
Same.
I don't miss that. Like I said, it's not something I can miss because, as I just said, I didn't experience it as a child, but I don't want it as an adult.
Before we wrap up, what is the future for Sega Mania Magazine? Because, like you said, you're doing each issue is for the next year as such. Now, by our recollection, it goes up to 99, maybe.
We're going to go 2001.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I'm not telling you what happens after that.
Interesting. So watch this space.
It is planned. People think, because a lot of people have asked that question. That's like almost the first thing everyone goes to, and I say I'm not going to tell them because it's a secret, and then that makes it sound like I'm just making that up because I'm not true. We do have ideas. We just very. I guess the whole thing of writing about 1 year is the most important thing to us is just to stay focused. And we just want to focus on what we're doing for now, and we don't want to draw external focus away from what we're doing either by keep thinking about what's coming up. So there is plans for that. Don't worry.
That's good. So where can our listeners and our viewers find you, either on social media, your website and so forth?
So we're available. Our main website is www.sega-mania.com. You can purchase the magazine from there, and we've also got blog posts on there, more information about each issue, all of our pricing, frequently asked questions, all the boring stuff's on there. That's the sort of our main central hub. And then we're probably most active on Twitter as far as social media is concerned, although Sam's doing some great work with Facebook and slowly building that profile. We're on Instagram, but I probably need some help from Sam and Simon with that because I don't understand how it works. I don't know why people take pictures of their food. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then also we have a Discord channel as well, and the link to that is on the website. So we encourage people to come and chat with us. We've got sections in there just to talk about gaming in general, or magazines, or suggest articles. We've really split it out, so there's lots of places on the Discord just to chat about anything we want, and we really encourage people engaging with us. It's a community magazine. At the end of the day, we couldn't be what we are without the great Sega community. So it's their magazine as much as it's ours, so come and say hello to us and we'll be happy to talk.
it almost seems cynical, doesn't it, to be like, oh, engage with us, as if it's like, yeah, because we want more followers and all this kind of thing. But one thing I've noticed through my own personal account is just how cool the community is, and how, like, I genuinely want to, you know, talk to these people on an individual basis rather than be like, just boost the follower account, you know, help us grow our social media channels and all the stuff that's kind of a bit, you know, it's a little bit jaded, isn't it? But like, talking to you guys, talking to you know, the people that collect things, interacting with people on Facebook, all these things, it's just been like, it's just really cool. It encourages you to do more, really. And it's
I guess it's because it's about a subject that you guys are passionate about, and that's the thing. You've all got a similar interest in the community as well. Whether even if it's, like you said, even if it's Nintendo, PlayStation, whatever, the gaming community as a whole, you know, to have like-minded or people who've got the same interest, the conversations can go as far and wide as you want them to.
Yeah, and it's really nice to be informal as well, to a certain extent, because I work, as I mentioned, I sort of work for a news organisation, and you know, there's like a tone of voice you have to have when interacting as a company, and in many ways, it's nice to get the shackles off and just shoot the shit with people. And you know, I'm not representing anybody except, you know, me and this sort of passion project. And there's a real nice freedom that comes with that, and just, you know, like I say, it's really informal, just laid back, and it's nice to interact with people in like a genuine way, rather than like, you know, on a little business level. Or, you know,
well, we have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you guys. We will put all the links to the magazine and your channels in the description. But for now, Simon, Sam, Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. We really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Don't forget, if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching and listening on, because then that way you won't miss out on any future episodes we put out.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms as well. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and give us a follow, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the latest episodes and posts that we put out there. But thank you for listening and watching.
And we'll see you next episode.